You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. I've got Brad Hunt here beside me. Today's guest is Mark Livesay from Treeline Academy. On this episode, we talk about grazing, cattle, sheep, goats, like
whatever.
All the critters that are on public land, and how you figure out if where all the grazing is
They're
occurring.
They're going to be in your area at that time while you're hunting. You can figure that all out.
Yeah, Mark was showing me this one where he could tell it was sheep grazed on this side of the fence and cattle grazed on this side of the fence. And because of the way sheep behave, he's like, I'm not hunting on that side of the fence.
How many of you have been on a hunt and sheep came through your area and guess what? All the game are gone. Well, you can figure that out where they're going and if they've been there or not.
And there's reasons for that. Like sheep have dogs typically. They have sheep herders. They have bells. They have
sheep eat the foliage to the dirt.
Yes. That does not mean that you can't shoot an elk, right, where sheep have been,
right,
which I've done.
Right.
But and it doesn't mean because there are grazing there that your spot's blown up.
Yeah.
But it's information to add to your toolkit for your hunt as you scout ahead of time. It's a really interesting discussion. This discussion highlights the importance of Mark's mapping toolkits that he's created through Treeline Academy. These toolkits are things he custom built, pulling data from all the states, various agencies, conservation groups, all that kind of stuff to pull into your Google Earth Pro app on your computer, so you can just see things that a lot of the hunting apps just don't cover yet. Someday maybe, but in the meantime, this is an incredible tool.
Yep. And
Mark breaks it down, and you're going to want to listen to it. It's great stuff. Watch it if you can. It'll be on our YouTube channel. Mark added all the visuals. Again, you can see how he custom colored and built the lines and all of that kind of stuff, so that you can really get at the data that he has collected. And for $39, you get all the states basically. All the toolkits for every state as he builds them out.
Right.
Or for $20, you can get just one state.
Yep.
But I mean, I'd rather have 6 states for $39 and all the rest of the 50 as he builds them out.
2 years, you might go hunt out of state, whatever.
So check it out. Use the code GRITTY if you're going to do it. That helps us fund the show. We appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think of this one. Catch you on the next one. Stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome back to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. My guest today is Mark Livesay, and we're back talking about, scouting, e-scouting, getting into the mountains, finding animals, elk. Primarily, that's one of the big course that you got right now with Treeline Academy. If you haven't listened to the other episode, before this one, we recorded an episode talking about they really build on each other. So 2 things. You'll want to go back and listen to the other show, or watch it rather, if you can. And these are going to have a lot of visuals in them, so you can see what we're talking about. So I highly recommend, even if you listen to this, that you go back, or that you just skip on over to the video version so you can see the graphics that we're going to cover. If you're into scouting for elk, if you got a tag, it doesn't matter if it's deer as well, anything in any state right now, any tags you've got, the topics we're covering in these episodes with Mark are going to be invaluable to you. So this last episode, we talked about burns, how critical they can be to finding game, useful. And we talked about your toolkits using Google Earth Pro, how you've gathered all these data sets, all this key information to put into Google Earth Pro so that you can basically leverage this tool at its maximal level,
right?
Finding game and understanding so much. And we talked about the differences between your regular hunt apps that are out there. Like GoHunt has a great desktop scouting application. You have your digital online, your mobile versions as well. We all use those in the mountains. But there's something about Google Earth Pro, lots of things about Google Earth Pro that exceed what is capable in the other applications, and highly recommend that you do that. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about grazing. This is the subject of this particular discussion we're going to have. I've been on a few hunts, Mark, years ago.
Livestock grazing.
Yes, livestock grazing. I've been on a hunt a few years back where it was a constant problem, especially with sheep in Colorado. I'm sure there's sheep in some other states, Idaho, but gosh dang, there's cattle as well. And these are tracts of public land where there's a grazing allotment and it's covered in animals, and it changes the dynamic of your hunt. I know there's going to be some guys listening that deal with that pain point. What do you got here that can help with that?
So, several of the hunting apps now have some level or some version of livestock grazing layers. And with my Treeline toolkits, I've added all the livestock data into here as well. So now you're able to look at your situation as far as related to grazing. We're kind of focused on that. So you're able to look at it and compare what you have in one tool. Like, let's say one of your hunting apps, Go Hunt, has livestock. I believe Onyx has it as well. Gaia does not have it. And then now you can look at the data sets that I've went out and obtained. Now, I went a little bit further. I obtained the livestock grazing allotments for both BLM and the Forest Service. And a lot of the hunt applications I've been seeing are really dedicated more to Forest Service grazing.
Okay.
And so
that's interesting.
Yeah,
I would have thought it was the reverse.
Yeah. So not that it's a big a deal, but there's not much worse than showing up in an area you're expecting this pristine mountain hunt, and there's just livestock everywhere.
You guys had horses last year.
Yeah. So I made a mistake last year. So that's a good example. I mean, even the master of e-scouting, I had this spot, and I have to admit it, I own it. It was my spot. I did all the research, and I never picked up on any livestock indications of livestock. There were no corrals. The trails I studied didn't look like they were parallel trails. There was no indications. But we get in there, and we hear all these bells all over the place. And they're horses. And I've never seen an active livestock grazing allotment for horses. Like significant.
It wasn't guides and outfitters with horses?
No, it was grazing, significant horse grazing.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like now, hundreds of horses.
Now let's talk about that a little bit. You still had a good hunt, though.
Oh, yeah.
So when is it the case that, okay, there's livestock here, I need to go somewhere else? And when is it you can hunt through it?
I have my own theories on this, but I don't mind sharing the mountains with some cattle. I've had some of my best elk hunts. Actually, my biggest bull that I have had a chance to kill that I missed wasn't the cattle fall, but there were literally cattle in the same field where the bull was. I think it comes down to if it's overgrazed or they're really
down to the dirt. Like in Arizona, there's some spots where it's like there's no animals because there's nothing left.
And all the tools that we're going to show you here in a second, they really can't tell you the volume of grazing, but we're going to talk about some other things that you can use along with the cow allotments to let you kind of figure out what's going on.
Okay.
So anyway, when you're looking at cattle allotments, what you first want to know is, one, where are they at? Number two, what livestock is actually being grazed? And is it an active lease or is it an inactive lease? So let's take a look at, we're going to open up this Colorado data set just because that's the one we've been using.
Which state, by the way, having done this, has the most cattle grazing leases and is the most egregious? Like pretty much every...
I don't know, but I can tell you Colorado, when I turn this on, you're going to be shocked. So before we do that, let's turn on the Colorado border so we can see where the state is.
And so this is the hunt units in the state by number.
These are the hunt units with labels.
Yeah.
And if you
that's part of your custom built tool set. That's not available. That's not in the default version of Google Earth Pro.
No, none of this data, guys. And that's where people get away. I'm glad you said that. We talked about that in the previous podcast. Google Earth in its basic form is only aerial photos. That's all it does.
Yeah.
So to get topographic maps, to get these hunt units, to get the grazing allotments, the fires, all the things we're going to be talking about, you have to load that data in order to have access to it.
Piece by piece. So basically what this is, we talked about on the other episode, but this is basically like your hunt app, but with more features and abilities and more detail. But you had to custom build this before, but now you offer a bundle where people can just go in and say, okay, I want all of Mark's mapping toolkits, and boom, in one button for $39, they can download the whole thing for 5 states or 6 states?
6 states.
6 states, and then every year you're going to add more states, and it's not going to cost people any more money. It's kind of a no-brainer. Go for $39, go and import this data and link up to Mark's system, and then every year as he adds data, 2023 data for each state, and adds all new states, it doesn't cost you any more money. You're kind of giving it away for pretty cheap there, but it's a no-brainer. And it does then convert your Google Earth Pro into like what I would use if I were up on Go Hunt, where I can see the hunt units, the boundaries, the private property, all that kind of stuff. Well, here we are with these tool sets where you can do a lot this and more using your Google Earth Pro.
Well, and what you've got here is you're able to use these hunt unit borders, but you're able to get the highest quality image available.
Yeah.
So there's
benefits.
If you've listened to me at all, you know that I say this, and people are tired of hearing me say it. I use the right tool for the job, and there's no tool that's perfect for every job. If you're going to work on your car, you're not going to fix everything with a screwdriver
or crescent wrench.
Exactly, or a hammer.
Yeah.
And when it comes to locating elk and developing hunt plans, and taking the average success for DIY archery elk, Brian Barney said at the Western Hunting Summit in Montana, is now 6%. Dude, that's one elk every 20 years. If that's the way you want to hunt, that's great. But I prefer to kill elk sooner than one every 20 years.
If it's 6%, and guys like Ryan kill every year,
you got to take that out of the equation. So it's not truly 6%.
No, because the same guys are killing every year. They've hacked the system. They've figured it out. Interesting. It's still fun. I don't want to discourage anybody. Now you just made everybody want to give up on hunting elk.
But the point is, you've got to put some. You've got to start stacking the odds in your favor. And this is one of the tools that I developed. Now, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I developed these toolkits for a selfish reason. These are my toolkits.
Right.
I've had these toolkits for years.
That's fine. I mean, this is the sort of thing where I've done the same thing where I want to film a hunt and make a film of it. It's kind of for me. But over the years, I might as well share it with everyone else too. It's a labor of love, but you can still make a little side hustle out of it.
That's right.
Too.
You know, but I had to clean it up. I had to clean it up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because I can handle the
because some of those
feature.
markers said that effing garbage hole, that lousy burn, never go here. Is that what it?
No, it just I
have waypoints named like that.
I named it more appropriately and organized it.
I have the burn in hell spot, that kind of. So okay, back to the mapping. So you can show me the grazing. Okay, so we've got the borders of the units turned on, and we're going to go down here. And we're going to turn on. First of all, I'm going to expand this folder. So that let me drag this out just a little bit, so that we can see Forest Service livestock allotments. Okay. BLM livestock allotments. So if we want to turn them both on, we just click above, and you can see the whole screen. Oh, dude! So now when you activate it, it overlays the layer. So what I've done. Holy cow! So why is the east half of the state no grazing, but the west is covered? Is the east private? Private. So what I've done, if you look close, wow. You can see that this area right here is a darker brown than this brown. Yes. So what I did was, I set the brown at a darker shade of brown and the opacity differently for Forest Service and BLM. So when I turn off the BLM, you can see the light brown goes away. Yeah, I see that. So these are just small things I want to point out where I took the time to style it to help people. It just helps with I found that the more I tweaked the visual look, the more usable it became, right? Sure. So the darker means Forest Service and the lighter is BLM. Okay. And I added the white borders because if you don't have the white borders, you can't see where one allotment ends and the other one begins. It just looks like one big brown blob, right? Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about. A lot of people could go find this data, but to style it like this and to get it in this kind of visual takes a little time.
Yeah.
So now that we can see all the allotments, if we click on one, you'll see that it brings up the information panel, just like any of the other layers in the toolkits. So it gives us the name of the allotment. It says that it is active and that it's cattle. And your example about horses, when I got home, I'm so mad at myself for not knowing about it. I looked it up. Sure as heck, it said horses, yes. And I just overlooked it. Not that we wouldn't have gone anyway, but
yeah,
I would never be afraid to hunt an area that was grazing horses, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this and I see cattle, sheep, goats, horses, donkeys, and mules, bison.
I've never seen a yes on the goats before, but I'm guessing that it's possible.
I'm sure they're out
there. But I
there.
can tell you one thing. When I pull these up and I see sheep, I'm not saying I wouldn't hunt that area, but I would definitely be making phone calls to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the next part.
What do you do next? You pull up this and you find out that a lot of your unit is being grazed. You find out it's yes. Let's say it's cattle. Now what do you do?
Well, what you do, it tells you the administration organization. In this case, it's the Gunnison Ranger District, right? So you can easily look up the Gunnison Ranger District in Google, call them, and you give them this allotment number, and you give them the name and the allotment number, and you say, hey, I'm looking at this grazing allotment. It says it's active. Do they have cattle in there? And how many do they have? Guys, when you can give them that kind of information, these people are actually excited to talk to you because it's a quick look up for them. But when you call up and say, hey, I'm going to be hunting in Western Colorado and I'm down here at by this intersection, and it's too hard, right?
So one time I was in an area, I remember way back when, and it was a lease thing like this. And there were some rules around the property that we could not hunt it without the cattle individual's permission.
Oh,
really? It was in Colorado, by the way, as well.
On public property.
Maybe it was state.
Okay, maybe state.
But it was a situation where we didn't know. We had to call, and we found out that because it was suspicious that there weren't anybody hunting there because it was a nice piece of property. It was public land. It had some leased grazing on it. Might have been state, but we actually made a call just to make sure. And it turns out that that particular lease owner didn't allow hunting on that public land piece.
Oh, I've never heard of that. That's some strange deal.
Yeah.
But again, that's another reason when you call, you're going to find that information out. So here's the thing. You just brought up a good information. So let's say we're looking at this. Well, where is the public land in relation to this livestock?
Right.
So we can jump over here and we can turn on the public land layer, which is right here.
Mm-hmm.
Once we activate the public land layer, it fills in all of the public lands. So now they're on top of each other, right? So here's what we can do. So pay attention to this. Mm-hmm. So when I click on the livestock grazing allotment right here, and I go down to this transparency, I can drop this transparency down further.
Oh,
So I can play with that even more than
now
what I've already
see where the public land
Now you
is,
can see it, right? You can drag it up, drag it up.
So you can quickly check your spot and go,
is this on Forest Service? Is it state? Is it BLM? So then, so that's one way you can turn up or down the transparency. Or you can just quickly toggle it on and off. Now, one step further, let's toggle it off. Let's say that you kind of want to, you can tell that, we've got public land here, but what exactly are these colors? So let's zoom in a little bit here.
To BLM.
So we've got purple, we've got blue, we've got green, we've got yellow. What do all those public lands mean? Well, if you click on them, it will tell you that's National Park Service and it's whatever. Okay, so you can do it that way, but you can also expand the folder and you can start turning off all of the individual. So for example, if I turned off the National Park Service, it goes away. So you can turn, let's say I only want to see U.S. Forest Service. Well, then you can turn only the U.S. Forest Service on for the state of Colorado. So let's say that you're looking at these grazing allotments and you want to know how much grazing is going on inside the wilderness area that you're hunting. Because that gets a little more weird, right?
Yeah.
So we can turn on the wilderness. I'm going to close that up. There is a layer for wilderness areas right here. So I can turn it on. Now we've got the overlay of all the wilderness areas. Isn't that funny? Look at that. So in Colorado, the grazing, I'm going to do the same thing I'm going to do the wilderness areas. I'm going to drag the opacity. There is a grazing allotment in that wilderness area.
Right in a certain spot there is.
See, when I got the wilderness,
what's the boundary? Is it what keeps where? How does
there is no boundary on it?
How do they come up with that line?
That line is the border of the wilderness area.
I know, but is it based on a river? Is it based on?
I don't know I don't know how that border that would.
That just looks arbitrary.
So let's click on this. What wilderness? It's the Fossil Ridge Wilderness Area. I don't know. I've never hunted there. But so here's an example where you can double check any public land that there's grazing permits for, and you can find out if the permit is active. You can find out what type of livestock is being grazed, and you can find out what year how long it's been grazed. But let's look at an example. Let's say what would give you an indication to think that there was a lot of grazing going on, right? What's something you could do in your e-scouting work that would help you figure that out? Well, let's go right down here to this gritty podcast data. And let's take a look at this livestock indications spot. I'm going to turn off the livestock. I'm going to turn off the wilderness. Okay, guys, so we're zoomed in here on this spot that I've already looked at before.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at a trail. So how do we know we're looking at a trail? Well, let's turn on the topographic map layer. So all my toolkits come with this EarthPoint topo as well.
That's sweet. So
you can see the trail running up through here, right?
People that are listening really got to go see the visuals on this video.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So I activated the topographic layer.
So now you definitely know it's a trail.
So we can see the trail. So I'm going to turn off the topographic layer. And sure enough, there's the trail.
Yeah.
So when we zoom in, you can see that there's a fence right there.
Mm.
Well, number one, why is there a fence on public property?
Cattle.
Right?
Grazing.
And then you see this trail. When you see a trail that has all of these access lines coming in from both sides, you see all those? That is not people and that is not outfitters. That's livestock.
How do you know?
Because the spiderweb nature of it. If this was an outfitter trail or this was a person trail, there'd be one. There wouldn't be one 5 feet away from another one, right? That's a telltale sign of cattle. This is another one. When you zoom in on a trail and you see where the trail has 4 or 5 parallel lines, that's usually not outfitters. Now, when you see 2 lines, it is possible that it's outfitters because outfitters like to ride side by side and chat. So when you see 1 or 2, I don't get excited. But when I see 4 or 5 lines like that, and I see this peeling off down here,
yeah.
I see, look right here. I see more here. And then really, especially when I see something like this intersection here, I know there's cattle.
Quite a few.
So what are we going to do? We see that. What are we going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is turn on my livestock layer. Sure enough. Okay, well, there's a line. Where do you think that line is? Right, that's that fence line.
Yeah.
That means there's 2 different allotments. So maybe there's cattle on this side, maybe there's not. Maybe they're grazing on this side, maybe they're not on this side.
Right.
This is the stuff you want to figure out because that may help you really dial in where the elk are. So we click on this side, it's going to tell us, oh, I automatically don't like this already. So I'm like, snowshoe, we got the allotment, it's active, and look what it says, sheep and horses, both sheep and horse grazing. It was 2004, and it's in the Paonia Ranger District. I would be calling the Paonia Ranger to know about that, because there's something going on here, because sheep don't make trails like that. Sheep go everywhere. When they walk, you've seen sheep grazing, right? They're in a pack.
They're in a mob.
Right. They don't walk in a single file line like cows do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that must have been an old cattle allotment that's now been turned into sheep or something. Yeah. So I hope you guys are following me. I want to investigate a little more. So that right there took us, less than 5 seconds. We know a lot more than we did. So now I'm going to click on this side of the fence. Look at that. That's interesting. I did not plan this.
It's only cattle.
Only cattle. So that makes sense.
And now, why do you hate sheep?
One, they make a lot of noise. And two, sheep also means a herder and dogs. There's almost no sheep grazing where some human is not chasing them around, yelling at them with the dog.
Oh, you're right.
So I feel like the sheep, and also they graze through the dirt.
Right.
It's like a mowing machine, or a lawnmower on steroids. So they don't leave a lot to eat, and they eat browse. Cattle don't eat a lot of the browse that the elk like.
Grass.
They eat a lot of the grass, and the elk like to eat a lot of the browse and the leaves. But those freaking sheep eat everything.
So now I know. I really want to stay out of that upper
the north end, I might not be that interested in.
Make a call, and if they're like, yeah, it's active. I mean, there's John Johnson has his sheep up there. Then you're going to stick to that lower half of the unit where it's a cattle allotment instead. How ironic. You didn't do this on purpose?
No, I didn't. But look at this. I'm just looking at this just now. I'm going to point some out. Mm-hmm. So remember, on the north side of this fence was the sheep allotment. And the south side of this fence was the cattle.
Right. That's all.
Where are the spider ones and where aren't the spider ones? Now you can tell that look how wide that trail is, okay? This is a busy trail. Either people, outfitters, horses, because something is, one, you can see it. Mm-hmm. I mean, all the way through. I don't know where it went. Maybe.
I see.
There it is, right there. It's just highly visible.
Yeah. The sheep side looks different than the cattle side.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't really think. I never even thought about it. I just pulled this up, but that's how I go about kind of breaking things down. Now, again. Livestock is not the end all, guys. It's just, okay, here's the deal. When you drive to Trailhead A and you pack in and you see a couple cows, but you know they're supposed to be there, does that bother you?
No.
But when you drive there and you didn't look it up and you see a big herd of cattle, you're like, psychologically, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Right?
You also aren't sure if you haven't done any research, how extensive is it, and did they push all the elk out or the deer out?
That's right. So I would want to ask, how many cattle are they running, and what's the size of that allotment?
Yeah. Areas in Colorado where I have hunted, and there were no sheep in prior years, and then all of a sudden one year there's a whole ton of sheep. There's a lot of foreigners on horses, and they're riding around, and they got dogs, and they're all over the place. Well, in that case, the hunting went downhill. It was not the same. There are a lot of sheep. So over the years, this happened to me in both Colorado and Idaho, where you're out there hunting. It's not that there's not some elk still there, but it's certainly a lot harder to get the job done when there's mobs of sheep rolling around with dogs and a bunch of sheep herders.
So let me give you a couple tips on, let's say that this area, it's got everything. And you feel like you want to take a chance on the cattle. Here's the way I would approach it. So I would turn on the topographic map and I would start looking at this terrain. And I would say, okay, I know that the cattle will graze all the pastures that are connected, that they can move from one pasture to the next. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What cattle don't like to do a lot of times is they don't like to go through the timber for extended lengths of distance to get to another meadow. Number one, they don't know the meadow's there. And second, they'll just take the low-hanging fruit, right? So if I'm hunting an area that's got a lot of cattle, I will start to look for high country spots that are disconnected from where the cattle will be in the lower basin. So, I don't know anything about this spot, but for example, I'm just looking around here real quick. I'm going to wait for this to load up.
It makes total sense somewhere.
Well, right here, here's a good example. You can see that how steep this is. This is really steep in this canyon. The cattle are not coming up through that. They just won't do it. So you see how steep it is behind. The cattle are not coming up the back. But you see this big bench?
Yeah.
Big bench with a lot of, look at the open. So let's turn back on it's even better. It's aspen trees. Aspen trees with opens, right? So you've got this super steep aspen grove here.
Yep.
You got this big bench with aspens all over it. Super steep behind. So if I knew there were cattle in this area and it was relatively heavy use cattle, I might want to concentrate more up in this upper high country, get away from where the cattle can get to easily. So my hunt plan and my strategy in an area that had cattle, I'm going to look for maybe some isolated areas where
pockets where the elk will go.
The elk will go when the cattle can't get to or are not willing to go there. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
When you first look at this,
you do that without e-scouting. You get there and you're like, freaking cows are all, where are they not? And you could see a bench and you're like, let's get up on there.
That's right. But I'm just saying now you're able to do it before you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little bit of how I would use that livestock allotment. So I mentioned aspens and I'm surprised you didn't say so. How do I know those are aspens?
Color.
Yeah, because this, if you look at the image of this photo, the date of this photo,
you can go back winter to summer as well, and
so it's October of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So in October, the aspens are starting to change color.
Yeah,
and so now you can start to see where the aspen and the conifer trees
run into each other,
start mixing, which I love those environments. Remember we were talking about in the last podcast.
Love those environments.
One of my favorite environments is edge habitats, and that is an edge habitat because the sunlight is not going to penetrate the conifer groves like the light is going to penetrate the aspen groves.
Right.
And so the grass and the forage in the aspen patches can be incredible.
Yeah.
But the elk can retreat to safety and bedding, especially early season archery, into the conifer patches, especially this spot. This is northeast facing. It's a high bench area. I mean, it's the
elk tend to love that aspen type stuff.
And here's what I like is when I find a bench like this, I get excited because now I don't like the fact there's a trail running through it, but when I find a bench zone that's this big, that's got steep below and steep above, it's money.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, and it's halfway up. So this bench is more about halfway. Now, I would like to see
checking all the boxes.
Checking all the boxes. I would like to see a little bit higher, but I still am getting a little. Now, I'm really excited about this right here.
There's water.
We got this drainage running down through. We got steep above, steep below, and it looks like there's openings. Let's take a look at that. It might be rocky. Yeah. Too rocky.
Yep.
Now, see what I'm looking at here? Guys, in Google Earth, with the high-quality image, we can see those rocks.
You're right.
If you were looking at another app, you might mistake that for open meadow.
Meadow, yeah.
But now with Google Earth, with their high quality, we can zoom in and see it's pretty rocky. So I would rechange what I just said. And this is more of a, there's the trail. Okay, so there's a more of a meadow environment as compared to the rocks. Anyway, so there you go. Like in this case right here, we've got a mixture of conifers all mixed in with these aspens. Because you can see the blue-green of the aspens that have not turned yet.
Yeah.
And the ones that are on the edge
are
starting to turn, and the interior ones have not just yet. So anyway,
that's cool.
I hope that helps a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, it's very cool. I think this is just one of those topics to cover to illustrate what your map toolkits bring to the table. If people want to get them, they can go to treelineacademy.net and they can download them. And like I said, it's $19-20 for a single state. Like if you're just only a Montana guy or Colorado, just buy the one. But it's hard to say. It's hard when you spend $39. You can get Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Wyoming, and Colorado. What else you got?
Utah's not showing right there. So Utah, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Wyoming. But what's most important about the bundle is I've already made the decision. I'm not going to charge more as I add more states. Mm-hmm. So if you make the investment for the 39, when I add Arizona or whatever I add, and no promises on that, I'm working on them as I can. But as I add more states, you get them all.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Instead of buying just one state.
Yeah, $39, and you get everything to make your Google Earth Pro app 1,000 times more useful. Now, some people, let's sit real quick, guys. When you do get a map toolkit, it comes with the instructions on how to do the whole thing. It's not that complicated, by the way, but it'll show you how to set it up, how to set up your Google Earth as well. Preferences.
When you sign up for the bundle, this is what the course is going to look like when you sign in, just like this screen. Mm-hmm. So the very first chapter is the map toolkit introduction.
Yeah.
When you click on it, it's got a short video, 4 minutes. It tells you a little bit about the concept, how it works, the network link file structure, all that, right? Kind of tells you, and it has text to go with it.
Yep.
And then the next chapter tells you all of the data sets that are in there, and it goes through a description of each one.
Yep.
And then the third chapter is how to install the toolkit. It's super simple, but I've got the system requirements. Mm-hmm. I've got how to do Google Earth installs, and then how to download the toolkit bundle. And then the next chapter is how to optimize Google Earth, how to set your preferences, all the settings. And then the full tutorial is how to work through the toolkit, step by step, every layer, how to turn it on, what it means. And then finally, with the bundle, it comes with the Spring Bear data set as well. And this last chapter tells you how that works and how you can use it for Spring Bear.
Yeah. No, it's freaking sweet, folks. Check it out. Go to treelineacademy.net. Check out the toolkits. If you haven't got Mark's e-scouting course for elk, you got to check that out. Mark, you've been making promises about some kind of bear course.
Well, I got these partners that are deadbeats. I got these 2 deadbeat partners that are dragging their feet.
Okay.
But I do want, we didn't mention this in the last podcast. So what I decided to do was, I know guys that think they've got e-scouting figured out. They don't need the e-scouting out course. Great. But they do want the tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did keep them separate, but I do have this thing I call the Ultimate Western Hunt Planning Package, mm-hmm. which includes all of the toolkits, mm-hmm. the bundle, and the e-scouting out course as a bundle.
Okay.
So it's $149, but with your discount, it's like $120.
Yeah. Use the code GRIDDY.
Use the code GRIDDY. So if you want everything, I do have a bundle that has everything.
Okay. Yep. It's very cool. Very useful. It's something everybody ought to get for the price. You can't. It's so worth it. This will change your entire hunting life from here forward. This data.
You know what? The last thing I'll say about this is that the Google Earth platform, people got away from it, including myself, when all the hunting apps came on the scene. Mm-hmm. But then I started to realize that you just can't beat the imagery. You can't beat the 3D. You can't beat the historical images. You can't beat the view shed, which we haven't even talked about, the profile mapping, all the things that Google Earth does extremely well that no on-app does. But what it was lacking was all the functionality and the data layers that the hunt apps have. Well, now the playing field's been leveled, and you no longer have to worry about that.
You used to have to tell people how to import and update their tool so that it would have all this data in it. But now you've done all the work. People just basically, they just tap into your network files, and now it just imports into their tool, and it auto updates every time you update the the cloud file.
That's right.
So it's pretty cool. It's a network link file. Very cool.
So this last chapter is the version tracker.
Okay.
So what I did with this chapter is you can see all the versions that have been put out and what has been added each time. So like this last bundle was 23.2, which included the addition of Utah. So you can see I added the spring bear in this version.
Nice.
So you can go back and check to make sure that you have the right version.
Yeah.
How do you know you have the right version? Well, I built this little image in. All you have to do is click on your data set, and it pops up a little window, and it tells you your version.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple, guys.
Yep.
So I've worked hard to make this data sets and these toolkits really usable, like right out of the box.
Yeah.
You don't really need instruction. The naming, I tried to name it appropriately where you just can click and play.
Yeah. Yep. All right, folks, we're gonna do another episode here shortly, cover another topic that I think would be nice to lay on you. So if you missed the first one about the fires, check that out. This was the grazing. We're gonna do another one here. But the bottom line is, check out the toolkits. They're very inexpensive, but they can change your all your e-scouting experience. So check it out. We thank you for always supporting the show. Mark, thanks for coming on the podcast, for sharing your information, for making these toolkits. And folks, we'll catch you on the next one. Stay gritty.